I would like to introduce you to our presenter today, Bill Evans, and he is the Senior Product Manager at WD. We also have Britton Spaniola on the line to make sure all of your questions get answered, so be sure to plug those in as we go along. And she is the Senior Programs Manager for WD. So Bill, whenever you're ready, take it away.
Thank you, Abby. Hello, my name is Bill Evans, and I want to share with you some insights about hybrid cloud backup. But before I do, I want to remind you that not only is WD the world's largest manufacturer of hard disk drives and a major provider of consumer, direct attached storage, and network attached storage, we also have a line of SMB products, including network attached storage and the My Passport Enterprise product. WD expanded into network backup products for SMBs with the acquisition of Arkeia software at the end of last year. And this webinar will discuss hybrid cloud backup as understood for SMBs by the Arkeia team at WD. So I want to start by reviewing data loss and backup, comparing cloud backup and hybrid cloud backup, and then investigating a few details of hybrid cloud backup so that you can make an informed decision whether hybrid cloud backup is a good fit for your organization. Now, the causes of data loss are many. The largest single cause, according to Kroll OnTrack, is hardware failure, followed closely by human error. But software failure, computer viruses, and natural disasters are also important. This is why backup remains an imperative. Successful backups and recoveries can make your career in IT, and a failure to deliver a failure to restore a file or recover a system when needed can have a similarly important impact on your career. So we think backups are particularly important. When we say backups, what we're talking about is the ability to define a restore point and then recover to that point of time in the past so that the data on your systems is what it was at some point in the past. This gives you protection against the failure of those systems, against human or software or hardware error, as well as against natural disaster. Some issues you have to address when you define a backup infrastructure include whether you want to back up to tape or to disk. Historically, most companies backed up to tape, and today more companies still back up to tape than back up to disk, though at the same time more companies are adopting backup to disk than backup to tape strategies. Another backup solution option that you need to select is the frequency of your backups, whether they're done daily or weekly or more frequently or less frequently. And then finally, you have to make an important decision about whether your backups are maintained both on-site and off-site or only off-site. If your backups are maintained only on-site, you simply don't have a backup strategy that you can rely upon. There are two more terms that I want to share with you before we get into the meat of this webinar. The terms are RPO, Restore Point Objective, and RTO. RPO is a point in time at which you can restore the data of your organization. This is always a point of time in the past, whether it's a day ago, a week ago, a month ago, or even a year ago. Having more restore points is generally better, but requires more storage media. RTO, which is the restore time objective, describes how long it will take you to restore your systems to a point of time in the past. Will it take you 15 minutes of effort to recover that file or restore that system, or will it take you an hour or 2 hours or 4 hours? to the same extent that more RPOs, more restore points are better, so shorter restore time objectives are better. And now cloud backup, as many of you are certainly familiar with it, cloud backup is the process of backing up computers directly to storage in the cloud. This is still today quite uncommon for businesses. It's recently become very interesting for consumers, and there are a number of services in the market that allow you to back up a PC at home or a Macintosh to the cloud, but it's still fairly rare for businesses. In this scenario, you put a backup agent on a computer that has data you want to protect, and when you do the backup, you push that data over the WAN directly into the cloud. It's a one-step operation. Not a quick step, because backups and restores are slow because the bandwidth is limited, but it's simple. Hybrid cloud backup is different. Hybrid cloud backup is a two-step operation. In hybrid cloud backup, you first perform a backup on the LAN. These backups tend to be very fast because LAN bandwidth is high. And then the second step of the operation is to push this backup set to replicate it from the local area network to the cloud. So in general today, businesses have three primary options for getting data off-site. The most common method, the tried and true method, is shown at top here. It's to move media by truck to a remote location. This tapes on trucks strategy has been the standard in backup for decades. This means that a backup is either done directly to tape or a backup is done to disk and then replicated to tape, all on the local area network. Then those tapes are moved by truck to a warehouse at least one earthquake fault away, or if you're in tornado region, the distance between two tornadoes. The alternative to tapes on trucks that we talked about a moment ago is cloud backup, where backups are performed on machines and then moved directly to the cloud. And then hybrid cloud backups, which is a two-step operation. You back up to a local backup server and then you replicate to the cloud. Any of these three strategies is an acceptable strategy for getting your data off-site. The way we recommend that you choose among these strategies is to look at various factors, costs, including fixed and variable costs, the length of the backup window, the time you need to restore, that famous RTO, and then less easily quantified figures such as reliability and convenience. Convenience is often cited as the biggest reason why people, especially small and medium businesses, don't like the tapes on trucks strategy. It requires human intervention and therefore is fairly likely to fail. Automated systems tend to be more preferable. Now, if we look at the three strategies, tapes on trucks, cloud backup, and hybrid cloud backup, and we evaluate them based on fixed costs, variable costs, length of the backup window, and the time needed to restore, we see that tapes on trucks looks pretty good. Tapes on trucks fares well in that the variable costs are low. It fares well because the backup window and the time to restore are short. Backup windows and the time to restore are short because the backups are done on the local area network, which generally has pretty high speeds, typically today 1 gigabit per second. Fixed costs, however, are high. They're high because it costs money to have a truck come to your offices every day. It costs money to build up an inventory of tapes that are being sent off-site regularly. It costs money to have a tape library that's used to manage multiple tapes so that tapes can be written unattended. Cloud backups, the second option, looks good primarily on the fixed cost metric. This is another reason why it's attractive to consumers. The fixed cost, the upfront investment, is very small. The variable costs, though, tend to be high, and the time it takes to complete your backups, that is the length of the backup window and the time to restore, are also long. We at WD have not seen a lot of SMBs, a lot of businesses in general, adopt direct-to-cloud backup. Hybrid cloud backup is the cloud strategy adopted by most businesses, and it fares well on 3 of the 4 metrics. Hybrid cloud backup looks good in terms of fixed costs, which are very low, as we'll see in later slides, and because the backup window is short and recovery times are short, since all of the backups are done first on the local area network, and because the recovery of most files, 99% of files, is done on the local area network. Recovery from the cloud is rare because recovery from the cloud is only required when your local backup sets become unavailable. The issue for hybrid cloud backups is variable cost. Looking at the comparison between hybrid cloud backup costs and tapes on trucks, we have this simple little graph. We know that the incremental cost of tapes on trucks is low because if you have 1 terabyte of data, say 1 tape, and you want to put that on a truck, the big cost is the tape library and the cost of the truck coming to your site. It's not the cost of that tape versus the additional tape. The fixed costs of tapes on trucks is high because of these costs, like tape inventory and the library and the truck coming to your site. In aggregate, those are substantial costs just to get started. But the incremental costs, if the volume of data you're protecting increases, those are relatively small. Hence the fairly shallow slope of the tapes on trucks line. By comparison, if you look at WAN replication, the fixed costs for WAN replication are very low. The primary fixed costs for WAN replication are the costs of remote disks. That is the target for the replication. Those disks can exist in another office owned by the same company, or in a colo, or in a hosted service provider's facility. One thing that's certain, though, is that there is some data volume for which, at every company, the cost of tapes on trucks is equal to the cost of WAN replication. I think it's intuitive that for very small volumes of data, such as 1 gigabyte of data, WAN replication has to be the less expensive alternative. Because with 1 gigabyte of data, there are a number of services that permit you to move the data up to the cloud very conveniently. And backup window is not an issue because the volume of data is so small. And I think it's also intuitively clear that if you have 100 terabytes of data, the tapes on trucks is the logical mechanism for getting your data off-site. It would take incredible bandwidth to move 100 terabytes of data off-site every day. That day is coming, it's just not here yet. So the crossover point between these two technologies is somewhere between 1 gigabyte and 100 terabytes. Based on my experience, I've seen it typically on the order of 200 gigabytes. It can range, again, to much bigger figures and even smaller figures, but it's still today a slightly smaller figure than you might guess it would be. Let's investigate that in the next few slides. But before that, it's clear that if you are making a decision based on that 200 gigabyte number, that means that if you have less than 200 gigabytes of data, you'll want to do WAN replication because it costs less. And if you have more than 200 gigabytes of data, you'll want to use tapes on trucks because it costs less. The interesting thing is that the cost of WAN replication is coming down year after year. So we expect that in a couple years, that crossover point will be further out, a higher number, say on the order of a terabyte, and then beyond that, perhaps several terabytes. And then after that, it might be still further out. It could be dozens of terabytes. So time is on the side of WAN replication because as bandwidth costs fall, the cost for moving an extra terabyte over the network every night will decrease, and the overall costs of hybrid cloud backup will also decrease. This chart is intended to help you understand how long it will take to back up data to a remote site given the bandwidth available to you. On the axis at left, we show the data volume after deduplication, and at the top we show the bandwidth to the cloud. Now, let me say a couple things about the importance of deduplication. If two shops have the same volume of data, but one shop has a deduplication solution that is twice as effective as the other, that compresses twice as well as the other, that shop will need only half as much bandwidth as the other shop. The big advantage today of deduplication is not in reducing the volume of disk you need to store your backups. The big advantage in deduplication is reducing the amount of bandwidth you need to move your backups from a local area network to the cloud. This presentation won't talk more about data deduplication, but let me emphasize how important data deduplication is in hybrid cloud backup. So let's consider the case that you have a volume of data that is equal to 1 terabyte. Now, this volume of data has been deduplicated, so before deduplication it might have been 10 terabytes in volume. Now, the bandwidth that you have available to the cloud might be 10 megabits per second. If so, and you want to do a full backup of that 1 terabyte of deduplicated data, you'll need 9.7 days to get the data up to the cloud. That's a long time, and that's certainly not something you can do, obviously, on a daily basis. On the other hand, this first backup, the initial backup, the full backup, constitutes a different kind of workload than an incremental backup. This first LAN replication is special because it happens only once. The first time happens only once for backups. And subsequent replications, the nightly replications that you'll do the second night and subsequent nights, might be 2 orders of magnitude less. So rather than moving 1 terabyte of data as you must the first day, subsequent nights you can move simply 10 gigabytes of data. This is not an exact science. Incremental backup sizes vary by customer, but numbers between 1 and 5% or even smaller are not uncommon. So what's interesting is that when you replicate a backup from your LAN to the cloud, you're going to see that some of the workloads tend to be large and can take a long time with a fixed volume of bandwidth. And other workloads, the most common workloads, tend to be small and take much less time. And if your nightly incremental backup took only 2.3 hours, hybrid cloud backup could be a very reasonable choice, though you'd still have the predicament of trying to get that first backup over the wide area network. So let's talk about that matrix in the context of replicating backups to the cloud. So for that initial replication, that big workload, the one that we saw might take 9.7 days, if it takes more than a week, it probably doesn't make sense to try to push it over the wide area network. This is a very rough rule of thumb. Different shops we've seen use different criteria, but it's almost certain that if it takes more than a week to get that big backup replicated to the cloud, a better strategy than using the WAN is to use portable disks. For subsequent backups, the small backups, the backups you would do on a nightly basis, if those take only a few hours, you clearly want to send those over the wide area network. That's the big attraction of hybrid cloud backup. 99% of the backups are small and can be sent over the network in a very short amount of time, and it's very reasonable to send them nightly. If you have a circumstance, though, where either your volume of data is very large or the rate of change of your data is large, and therefore your incremental backups and subsequent replications have to move a lot of data, then nightly replication will be impossible. If your nightly incremental backups take more than 24 hours to move to the cloud, then you'll fall behind on your first night and you will never catch up. One key issue to consider on this page, though, is the fact that that initial backup doesn't have to be moved on the WAN. It's practical to move it over portable disks, and people are doing this successfully today. So for these WAN transfers, said another way, if the workload is large, as it would be for an initial backup or for disaster recovery, don't size your network for this workload. Instead, make these transfers on physical media, move them on portable disks. These large workloads happen rarely, and the bandwidth required is so high that you could never size your network to accommodate this kind of workload. And by comparison, for those nightly backups, for the small workloads, or for the recovery of a single file, because these workloads happen frequently, and because the bandwidth is small, it makes sense to size your backup bandwidth for these small events. So the small events you do in an automated fashion over the internet. The large events you try to do cheaply by putting the data on portable disks and sending them by courier or by truck or by sneakernet to the remote location. The internet solution is great because it's automated, because you don't have to think about it. And the portable disk solution is great because it's cheap and can handle very large volumes of data. Now, when we talk about transporting, replicating large backup sets via portable disks, we use the term seeding and feeding. The term seeding came around because of the reference to cloud seeding. And seeding generally refers to the transport of the initial backup on portable disks to the cloud, whereas feeding describes the transport of backup sets via portable disks to the cloud after previous backup sets have already been transported. We believe that you need both seeding for that initial backup and feeding for any subsequent backup that is so large that it can't be sent over the network in the space of a night. It's important to be able to use portable disks interchangeably with the network. You choose disk or you choose the network depending on the workload at hand. If you do the calculation, and there's a little bit of a typo in this slide. If you do the calculation, if you have a 10 terabyte disk array and you send it overnight via FedEx and it takes 24 hours to arrive at the destination, that's equivalent to a 1 gigabit per second network. So if you have a 20 terabyte disk array, that would give you 2 gigabits per second. Or if you send it late in the day and it's intended to arrive in the early morning of the following day, that 10 gigabytes taking 12 hours might itself constitute 2 gigabits per second network. Now, when you're using these disks, of course, you have to have a backup solution like WDs that allows you to export backup sets to disk and import backup sets from disk. It's also important to be able to encrypt your backup sets for transport, or in the case your backup sets are not encrypted when they're written, that they are encrypted when they're written to the portable disk used for the seed and feed. And then finally, here's another tip of the hat to deduplication and compression. If you can double the amount of double the effectiveness of your deduplication and compression, choose a solution that offers great compression ratios, you can reduce the size of the portable disks you need to move your backups. So a typical hybrid cloud deployment, as we've seen it, consists of a backup server on the local area network. You do the backup to the server on the local area network. That might be an appliance like the Arkeia backup appliances. And then you replicate the big backups via portable media to the cloud, and you replicate the small backups over the wide area network. The portable media might be used only once ever over a period of many years, or the portable media might be required periodically, say once or twice a year. But it permits you to size your bandwidth for the nightly incremental backup rather than sizing your bandwidth for that initial full backup replication. Let me say a couple words about choosing between private and public clouds. Private clouds are generally more secure and less expensive. You can control them. You own the storage. The big con to private clouds is that it requires more expertise and it requires an investment in the disks and the colo location. For public cloud, the big pros are the fact that you don't have to invest up front, exactly the reverse of private clouds, and they're easy to expand and you don't need expertise. By comparison, the cons of private cloud are both that they tend to be more expensive and that you don't have the flexibility to do seeding and feeding. Most of the hosting vendors that offer public cloud haven't caught up to this idea of seeding and feeding, moving data sets via portable media. Let me spend a couple slides to talk about cloud recovery versus hybrid cloud recovery. So if you use cloud backup or hybrid cloud backup, your data are moved to the cloud, they're deduplicated, they're compressed, they're encrypted, they're secure. If you're using a cloud backup strategy, only the data live in the cloud, and the only way to get your data back are to pull the data back over the wide area network. But if you're using hybrid cloud, you have more options for recovery because you have a backup storage in the cloud. The options that you have include not only bringing the data back over the wide area network, but two others. I'm sorry, I went to the wrong slide. You have two others. One is you're able to recover your data, either your machine images, your virtual machine images, or your files. You're able to recover them in the cloud and use them in the cloud. That's the first. You restore them in the cloud. Or second, you export them to portable disks to be sent back to the local area network. The problem with relying on the wide area network for recovery is the same as the problem of relying on the wide area network for those large workloads, the first backup as an example. If you want to recover the images of a dozen machines that have been lost, you can't practically do that over the wide area network. It simply doesn't provide enough bandwidth for most businesses. You either have to use the big pipes in the cloud to recover to the cloud, typically virtual images, or you export those backup sets to portable media and send them by overnight delivery back to the local area network. So in summary, hybrid cloud backup offers a very interesting alternative to tape. The big qualitative attraction is that hybrid cloud backup can be automated so that every night an incremental backup is pushed automatically up to the cloud. You don't have to worry about tape handling or delivery services. Hybrid cloud backup will also be less expensive than tape for small data volumes. You have to be careful, though, that hybrid cloud backup can't handle all environments, because if you can't move your nightly incremental backup over the WAN in the course of a night, in the course of 24 hours, then you simply won't be able to maintain the pace of nightly replications over the wide area network. The costs of hybrid cloud backup are different than the costs, are structured differently than the cost of tape backup. The fixed costs for hybrid cloud are very low. The primary variable costs for hybrid cloud backup are first bandwidth. That's the single largest cost. And then second, the cost of target disk. If you decide to investigate hybrid cloud backup as an alternative to tapes for getting your data off-site, pay special attention to the disaster recovery strategy. You have some excellent options, better options than tape or cloud backup can provide. And finally, pay attention to the choice between private and public clouds. They're similar, but the benefits are very different for the two solutions. For the next 5 minutes, I would like to say a few words about Western Digital, about WD and the products that WD offers for data protection. Western Digital was founded in 1970. We're headquartered in California. We're a $15 billion company with almost 100,000 employees worldwide. We are the largest disk manufacturer in the world and have a broad product line of not only hard disk drives, but also consumer branded products. Western Digital acquired Arkeia software last year and has added Arkeia software to WD's portfolio of SMB storage products. The WD Arkeia solutions for network backup are based on Arkeia Network Backup, which was first made available in 1999. The WD Arkeia backup servers can be deployed as hardware appliances, and you can see examples of 2U appliances in the lower right of this slide. They can be deployed as virtual appliances on the VMware hypervisor, and they can be deployed as software applications. However you deploy your backup server, you have the choice of two management styles. You can use our web user interface shown in the upper right. The web user interface is ideal for interactive management, the definition of save packs, doing restores and the like. Or you can use our command line interface, which is ideal for scripted solutions. Most of our customers only use the web user interface, but both are available. WD Arkeia protects both virtual environments and physical environments. There's no need to have a separate solution for virtual and a separate solution for physical. Virtual has been the latest hot thing in backup over the last several years, but we're confident that physical machines will probably always be with us, and new virtual environments will come into the market in the future that we will support. So having a single backup solution for all of your platforms, whether physical or virtual, whether Windows or Linux, or Unix or Mac, having a single solution is the key to successful, reliable backup strategy. WD Arkeia incorporates several key technologies to enable fast backups. We provide what we think is the industry's best deduplication technology. It is patented and called progressive deduplication. You can find more about this on our website. We also offer a technology that we call multi-flow. Multi-flow makes our backups fast because multi-flow allows us to back up multiple clients in parallel. We don't back up one client and then the next and then the next. We back up many clients in parallel so no client can be the bottleneck in the speed of the backup process. And then finally, we offer consistent support for backup targets that include disk, tape, and cloud. Arkeia is made available exclusively through WD's channel partners worldwide. We have a proven product with over 100,000 customers in 100 countries. And so with that quick background, I'd like to invite you to send me email if you have questions about hybrid cloud backup or an interest in Arkeia products. Let me hand it over to Britton for the Q&A session. Britton?
Hi, it looks like we had a few questions come in during the webinar, so I'll start out with question number 1. How are large backups to the cloud handled?
Large backups that are sent directly to the cloud are handled universally very slowly. If you choose a direct-to-cloud backup strategy, your backup window cannot close until the last file or the last image has been received by the server in the cloud or received on storage in the cloud. That makes backup direct to the cloud very slow. The alternative is, of course, hybrid cloud backup, where the backup window closes when the backup is complete on the LAN, and regular business processes can recommence on the local area network because the backup window is short, and then the replication takes place asynchronously. And this replication can be performed either over the wide area network or via portable media, what's called seeding and feeding.
Okay, next question. Is there any speed loss due to encryption?
Encryption does not change the volume of data that's moved over the network generally. So encryption does not affect the bandwidth required to move your data into the cloud. Encryption can, for some products, slow backup performance. If the encryption is performed at the backup server can be a bottleneck for encryption because the encryption puts an additional load on the CPU. The best strategy for both deduplication and encryption and even compression, the best strategy for all of those CPU-intensive operations is to perform them on the backup clients, not on the backup server. If you perform encryption, deduplication, or compression on the backup server is the bottleneck. If you perform those three on the client, you have effectively a scale-out architecture where all of the clients that are doing backups are leveraged in parallel to do the encryption, deduplication, and compression before the data is moved over the LAN to the backup server and well before it's moved over the WAN to the cloud. And that's true of the WD Arkeia solution. WD Arkeia supports source-side dedupe, source-side encryption, and source-side compression.
All right, next question. Do you or when will you have a Hyper-V option available for Arkeia?
Today, WD Arkeia protects Hyper-V environments. We do not offer virtual appliance targeted to Hyper-V environments, though we know of customers who run Arkeia in a Hyper-V environment. You can either you can use your choice of Linux operating system to spin up the backup server and run it in a Hyper-V environment. But if your objective is to protect Hyper-V environments, we have a complete solution today based on VSS.
Okay, and another question that came in, does it make sense to use WAN optimization products to accelerate the replication of backup sets off-site?
That is a very good question. WAN optimization technology, WAN optimization products use primarily two technologies to achieve acceleration of WAN traffic. These two technologies, maybe 2.5 technologies, are deduplication and TCP optimization. The half is, some people say, caching, but caching is a natural part of deduplication. So the way WAN optimization products work is they take an inbound data stream, they blockify the inbound data stream, they hash those blocks, and look to see if they're known blocks. This is deduplication. If a block has been seen before, rather than sending the data of the block, only the hash code for the block is sent to the other end of the network. And then the other end of the network will look up that hash block in its list of known blocks and deliver the known block corresponding to that hash. So that's the combination of deduplication and caching. I understand that deduplication accounts for above 80% of the benefit you get from WAN optimization, and TCP optimization accounts for the balance. Now, if, as many of you certainly are aware, if the data going into a deduplication process are random data, deduplication can provide no benefit. So if the data going into a deduplication system have previously been compressed, or have previously been deduped, or have previously been encrypted, in each of those three cases, they're seen by the deduplication system as random data. And deduplication will not be able to reduce the volume of data and therefore reduce the bandwidth necessary for transmission over a WAN. So the idea that you can use deduplication on the LAN and then subsequently use WAN optimization products to further compress the data is not true. Once the data have been randomized, by definition, no further compression is possible.
Okay, and we have one more question. What cloud vendors do you work with?
We work with generally all the cloud vendors. There is not a constraint imposed by any that I'm aware of that precludes the use of the WD Arkeia products. It's a matter of installing a backup server in the cloud and using the cloud as a target. You can use cloud providers both for direct-to-cloud backup. We have a few customers that do that, or you can use public cloud providers as backup using a hybrid cloud backup strategy. So the two are both options.
Okay, so that's all the questions that we have for today.
Thank you, Britton.
All right. Well, thank you both. Yes, that was such a great presentation. So I just wanted to say thanks to WD and all of you for listening in today. I wanted to let you know that you can register for WD's next webinar, which will be on May 30th, by clicking on the small purple globe at the bottom of your screen, and that'll take you to a screen to register for that. And also just wanted to draw your attention again one more time to the small red box with the check mark in it. And if you could for us before you get off the line, go ahead and answer a couple of those survey questions. That would be super helpful. So again, thank you, Bill. Thank you, Britton, for getting on the phone with us today. And I hope everyone has a great rest of the afternoon.